Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Standard 9 English. Today we're going to learn one of the Kannada folk tales in the Kingdom of Fools from A.K. Ramanujan's Folk Tales from India. And this is the picture of the author, and we'll get to know about the author first. Attipet Krishnaswamy Ramanujan, born on 16 March 1929, Mysore, British India, was an Indian poet and scholar of Indian literature who wrote on both English and Kannada. Ramanujan was a poet, scholar, professor, a philologist, folklorist, translator, and playwright. His academic research ranged across 5 languages like English, Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, and Sanskrit. He published works on both classical and modern variants of this literature and argued strongly for giving local non-standard dialects. Though he wrote widely and in a number of genres, Ramanujan's poems are remembered as enigmatic works of startling originality, sophistication, and moving artistry. In 1976, the Indian government honored him with the title Padma Shri, the 4th highest civilian award in the country, and the Sahitya Akademi Award later in 1999 for his collection of poems, The Collected Poems. He died on 19 July 1993, Chicago, United States. Also, Kannada is a regional language mainly spoken in the state of Karnataka. This story is a Kannada folk tale, and folk tale is a story which is passed down from one generation to another. First of all, let us discuss the title of the story, In the Kingdom of Fools, which means the state where people are not so wise, which means they are not intelligent. In this story, the king, his minister, and his advisors are fools. This folktale brings to light the danger posed by foolish people. It also emphasizes the view that foolish people can be very difficult to manage. They can be dealt with only by the wise and calm people. So the foolish activities of the king and his minister have been told in the story and the consequences of their foolish ideas. With that introduction, we'll move on to the story now. In the Kingdom of Fools, both the king and the minister were idiots. They didn't want to run things like other kings, so they decided to change night into day and day into night. They ordered that everyone should be awake at night, till their fields and run their businesses only after dark, and go to bed as soon as the sun came up. Anyone who disobeyed would be punished with death. The people did as they were told for fear of death. The king and the minister were delighted at the success of the project. One day, a guru and his disciple arrived in the city. It was a beautiful city. It was broad daylight, but there was no one about. Everyone was asleep, not a mouse stirring. Even the cattle had been taught to sleep by day. The two strangers were amazed by what they saw around them and wandered around the town till evening, when suddenly the whole town woke up and went about its nightly business. So in the Kingdom of Fools, the king and his minister, both were fools. They did not want to run their kingdom like other kings did, so they decided to do something different. They started treating night as day and day as night. They ordered that the work which was done at night would be done during the daytime, and the work which was done during the daytime would be done during nighttime. They passed an order that everyone in the kingdom would work at night. Nobody would sleep at night. The farmers would do farming at night, and the ones who ran businesses would do business at night. As soon as the sun rose, everyone would go to sleep. If someone would disobey the order, he would be punished with death. The people were scared that if they did not obey the king's order, they would be sentenced with a death penalty. So they obeyed the order, although it was strange. The king and his minister, both the fools, were very happy that all the people in the kingdom were following their order. One day, a saint arrived in the Kingdom of Fools along with one of his disciples. He saw that it was a beautiful city. It was a sunny day, but could not find anyone around. They were surprised. Everyone was asleep and not even a mouse was moving around, which means that it was so quiet as everyone, even the tiniest creatures, the mice were asleep. The people had trained the cattle to sleep during the daytime, so everyone, humans as well as animals, were sleeping. These these two strangers to the kingdom of fools were not aware that this kind of order had been passed in the city, so they were surprised to see that everyone was sleeping during daytime. They kept on wandering around the whole city, and as soon as it was night, everyone woke up and started doing their work. Businessmen were doing business, and farmers were farming. The two men were hungry. Now that the shops were open, they went to buy some groceries. To their astonishment, they found that everything cost the same, a single dadu. Whether they bought a measure of rice or a bunch of bananas, it cost a dadu. The Guru and his disciple were delighted. They had never heard of anything like this. They could buy all the food they wanted for a rupee. When they had cooked and eaten, the Guru realized that this was a kingdom of fools and it wouldn't be a good idea for them to stay there. This is this is no place for us. Let's go, he said to his disciple. But the disciple didn't want to leave the place. Everything was cheap here. All he wanted was good, cheap food. The Guru said, "They're all fools. This won't last very long and you can't tell what they'll do to you next." But the disciple wouldn't listen to the Guru's wisdom. He wanted to stay. The Guru finally gave up and said, "Do what you want. I'm going," and left. The disciple stayed on, ate his fill every day, bananas and ghee and rice and wheat, and grew fat like a straight-side sacred bull. So the Guru and his disciple were very hungry. When the shops opened at night, they went to buy groceries. They were surprised to see that whatever they bought from the shop costed one dadu. The things were very cheap out there. Whether you buy a big bunch of bananas or you buy a big bag of rice, it costed only one dadu. Everything was at the same price in the kingdom of fools. The Guru and his disciple were very happy because the food in the kingdom was very cheap. You could buy a lot of food just for a rupee. When the Guru and his disciple cooked and ate their food, the Guru realized that the kingdom was a kingdom of fools and decided not to stay there any longer because it was unsafe for them. The wise Guru told his disciple that the place was not right for them and asked him to leave at once. His disciple was a foodie. He loved to eat and he did not want to leave this place because the food was cheap there. Guru tried to make his disciple understand and told him that everyone out there was a fool and are very dangerous. The kingdom not last for a long time and they could harm them too. The disciple, in not who was not foresighted like his Guru, could not understand what his Guru was trying to say. He wanted to live there and enjoy the cheap food. Finally, the Guru alone left, leaving the disciple behind. The disciple stayed there in the kingdom of fools. Every day he ate a lot of food, due to which he became as fat as a huge bull. One bright day, a thief broke into a rich merchant's house. He had made a hole in the wall and sneaked in. And as he was carrying out his loot, the wall of the old house collapsed on his head and killed him on the spot. His brother ran to the king and complained, "Your Highness, when my brother was pursuing this Asian trade, a wall fell on him and killed him. This merchant is to blame. He should have built a good strong wall. You must punish the wrongdoer and compensate the family for this injustice." The king said, "Justice will be done. Don't worry," and at once summoned the owner of the house. When the merchant arrived, the king questioned him. "What's your name?" "Such and such, your Highness." "Were you at home when dead man burgled your house?" "Yes, my lord. He broke in and the wall was weak, it fell on him." The accused pleads guilty. "Your wall killed this man's brother. You have murdered a man." We have to punish you." "Lord," said the helpless merchant, "I didn't put up the wall. It's really the fault of the man who built the wall. He didn't build it right. You should punish him." "Who's that?" "My lord, this wall was built in my father's time. I know the man. He's an old man now. He lives nearby." The king sent out messengers to bring in the bricklayer who had built the wall. They bought him, tied hand and foot. "You, there, did you build this man's wall in his father's time?" "Yes, my lord, I did." "What kind of a wall is this that you built? It has fallen on a poor man and killed him. You've murdered him. We have to punish you by death." So one day a thief entered a merchant's house. He made a hole in the wall to gain access. But when he was about to move out of the house after looting all the things, the wall broke and fell on his head and he died instantly. The thief's brother went to the king and complained that his brother was following his Asian trade, although the Asian trade, robbing, is a crime. While he was working, the wall fell on his head and he died. The thief's brother was taking advantage of the king's foolishness. He said that the merchant whose wall has fallen down on his brother was the culprit. He should have made a strong wall, and he requested the king to punish the merchant and get compensation for his family. The king was so foolish that he did not consider the fact that the dead man was committing theft at the time of his death. He only thought that the man died because the wall fell on him and the owner of the house whose wall fell on him had to be punished. So he called the merchant. As soon as the merchant appeared, the king asked his name, and the king asked him whether he was at home when the dead man, the thief, was robbing his house. The merchant replied that he was at home, and the thief made a hole in the wall and entered his house, and when he was trying to get out, the wall fell down on him, and because it was weak. Then the king told the merchant that he was guilty, he did wrong. Due to this weak wall, the thief died and now he would be punished. The merchant pleaded in front of the king, requested that it was not his fault. The wall was weak because the person who made the wall did not construct it properly. Hence, the king should punish the man who constructed the wall. And further, he added that the wall was made during his father's time. The person who built it was very old. He knew him as he lived nearby, so the king sent his messengers to call the bricklayer who built the wall. They tied his hands and feet and brought him into the king's palace. Then the king asked him that did he build the wall, and for which he replied in affirmation. He said yes. The king said the man had built a weak wall, and that wall fell on the poor thief's head and killed him. The bricklayer would be punished for this with death. Before the king could order the execution, the poor bricklayer pleaded, "Please listen to me before you give your orders. It's true I built this wall and it was no good, but that was because my mind was not on it. I remember very well a dancing girl who was going up and down that street all day with her anklets jingling, and I couldn't keep my eyes or my mind on the wall I was building. You must get that dancing girl. I know where she lives." "You're right, the case deepens. We must look into it. It's not easy to judge such complicated cases. Let's get the dancer, wherever she is." The dancing girl, now an old woman, came trembling to the court. "Did you walk up and down that street many years ago while this poor man was building a wall? Did you see him?" "Yes, my lord, I remember it very well." "So you did walk up and down with your anklets jingling. You were young and you distracted him. So he built a bad wall that has fallen on a poor burglar and killed him. You have killed an innocent man. You'll have to be punished." So when the king was about to pass an order to execute the bricklayer, he requested the king to listen to him. He agreed that he did not make the wall properly. It was because of a dancing girl who was roaming around in the street and her anklets were making a jingle sound. Due to her anklets' jingle sound, he was not able to concentrate on his work and so built a weak wall. It was not his mistake, it was the fault of the dancer girl. He added that he knew where this dancing girl lived and she should be punished instead of him. The king was satisfied with the bricklayer's explanation, and he told the case was very complicated and wouldn't be solved so easily. He ordered his messengers to get the dancer girl. The dancing girl had become an old woman and she was trembling as she entered the court. The king asked her that many years ago as was she dancing and roaming around the lane while the bricklayer was constructing the wall where her movement distracted him. She accepted the truth. He told her that as she was roaming around with her anklets jingling, it distracted the bricklayer. Due to that, he could not do his work properly and he built a bad wall which fell on the innocent thief and he was killed. It was because of her that the thief died and she would be punished with death. She thought for a minute and said, "My lord, wait. I know why I was walking up and down that street. I had given some gold to the goldsmith to make some jewelry for me. He was a lazy scoundrel. He made so many excuses, said he would give it now and he would give it then, and so on all day. He made me walk up and down to his house a dozen times. That was when this bricklayer saw me. It's not my fault, my lord, it's the damned goldsmith's fault." So the dancing girl transferred the blame onto another person. She said that she roamed around that lane again and again because she had to visit the goldsmith's shop. She had given some gold to him to make jewelry out of it, and he was a dishonest person. He kept making excuses for not making her ornaments in time. He kept on asking her to come after some time. Due to that, she had to go to his house at least a dozen times. So the dancing girl said that it was the fault of the goldsmith and not hers. Further, the dancing girl says that when the bricklayer saw her and got distracted, it was the fault of the goldsmith because of whom she was roaming in the lane again and again. Poor thing, she is absolutely right, thought the king, weighing the evidence. We have got the real culprit at last. Get the goldsmith wherever he is hiding at once. The king's bailiff searched for the goldsmith who was hiding in a corner of his shop. When he heard the accusation against him, he had his own story to tell. "My lord," he said, "I'm a poor goldsmith. It's true, I made this dancer come many times to my door. I gave her excuses because I couldn't finish making her jewelry before I finished the rich merchant's orders. They had a wedding coming and they wouldn't wait. You know how impatient rich men are. Who's this rich merchant who kept you from finishing this poor woman's jewelry, made her walk up and down, which distracted this bricklayer, which made a mess of his wall, which has now fallen on an innocent man and killed him? Can you name him?" So now the king agreed with the poor dancing girl. He thought a lot and finally said that now they knew who the real culprit was. He ordered to bring the goldsmith. The bailiffs in the king's court went in search of the goldsmith and brought him to the court. The goldsmith was hiding inside the shop as he feared of being arrested. He was brought in front of the king. He told his side of the story. He said that the dancing girl was right. He made many excuses and made her visit his shop again and again, but it was not his fault. He had an order from a rich merchant and they had a wedding at their place and were in a hurry to get their order, and that is why the dancing girl's work was getting delayed. The goldsmith named the merchant, and he was none other than the original owner of the house, whose wall had fallen. Now justice had come full circle, thought the king. Back to the merchant. When he was rudely summoned back to the court, he arrived crying. "It wasn't me, but my father who ordered the jewelry. He's dead. I'm innocent." But the king consulted his minister and ruled decisively. "It's true, your father is the true murderer. He is dead. But somebody must be punished in his place. You have inherited everything from that criminal father of yours, his riches as well as his sins. I knew at once, even when I first set eyes on you, that you were at the root of this horrible crime. You must die." So then the king asked the goldsmith to name the rich merchant. The goldsmith said that the merchant was the same merchant whose house wall had fallen down. Justice has come full circle means the story ended at the same person from whom it has started. The thief died under the wall of the same merchant whose jewelry this goldsmith was making. Once again the merchant was called. He was crying and he knew that the king was foolish and he would give him death sentence. He said that it was not he who had ordered the jewelry, but it was his father. His father was dead and it was none of his fault. The king consulted his minister and gave the decision that the merchant's father was the murderer. The thief died because of him, as the merchant's father was not alive and someone had to be punished for the crime. So he said that merchant's son, who had inherited everything from his father, would have to take the punishment for his wrongdoings as well. He added that when he had seen the merchant for the first time, at that moment he had a feeling that he was a very root cause of the crime. The king announced that now the merchant would have to die. And he ordered a new stake to be made ready for the execution. As the servants sharpened the stake and got it ready for the final impaling of the criminal, it occurred to the minister that the rich merchant was somehow too thin to be properly executed on the stake. He appealed to the king's common sense. The king too worried about it. "What shall we do?" he said, when suddenly it struck him that all they needed to do was to find a man fat enough to fit the stake. The servants were immediately sent all over the town looking for a man who would fit the stake, and their eyes fell on the disciple who had fattened himself for months on bananas and rice and wheat and ghee. So when this new weapon was getting ready, the minister felt that the merchant was very thin and he could not be executed in this way. He told this to the king, and the king too got worried. The king got an idea that they should catch hold of a man who was fat enough to be executed with the stake. The merchant would not be put to death because he was too thin to be executed with the stake. They thought of punishing another person instead of the merchant, one who was fat enough to be executed with the stake. Finally, the king sent his servants round the kingdom to look for a man who was fat enough to be executed, and they found the Guru's disciple who had become very fat because of overeating. "What have I done wrong? I'm innocent. I'm a sannyasi," he cried. "That may be true, but it's the royal decree that we should find a man fat enough to fit the stake," they said, and carried him to the place of execution. He remembered his wise Guru's words. "This is a city of fools. You don't know what they will do next." While he was waiting for death, he prayed to his Guru in his heart, asking him to hear his cry wherever he was. The Guru saw everything in a vision. He had magic powers. He could see far and he could see the future, as he could see the present and the past. He arrived at once to save his disciple, who had got himself into such a scrape through love of food. So the disciple said that he was a sannyasi, he had not done anything wrong, he was innocent. Then why were they taking him? The king's servants said that he was innocent, but they were ordered to catch hold of a fat man who could be executed with the stake, and he was fit for it, and that is why they were taking him along. The disciple is reminded of his Guru, Guruji, who was a wise man who had told him that it was a city of fools and they could harm him any time. Now they were taking him along to execute him. The helpless disciple prayed to his Guru and asked him to come to his rescue. The Guru could visualize the disciple's message, and due to his magical powers, he could see everything. He could see the future, the present and past, and he could see everything in the vision. The Guru arrived there to save his disciple. The disciple was trapped in a very difficult and serious situation. They were about to execute him, although he had not done anything wrong. So the Guru came to rescue him from this situation. As soon as he arrived, he scolded the disciple and told him something in a whisper. Then he went to the king and addressed him. "O wisest of kings, who is greater, the Guru or the disciple?" "Of course the Guru, no doubt about it. Why do you ask?" "Then put me to the stake first. Put my disciple to death after me." When the disciple heard this, he understood and began to clamor. "Me first! You brought me here first! Put me to death first, not him!" The Guru and the disciple now got into a fight about who should go first. The king was puzzled by this behavior. He asked the Guru, "Why do you want to die?" "We chose it because we needed a fat man for the stake." "You shouldn't ask me such questions. Put me to death first," replied the Guru. "Why, there is some mystery here. As a wise man, you must make me understand." "Will you promise to put me to death if I tell you?" asked the Guru. The king gave him a solemn word. The Guru took him aside out of the servant's earshot and whispered to him, "Do you know why we want to die right now, the two of us? We've been all over the world, but we never found a city like this or a king like you. That stake is the stake of God of justice. It's new. It has never had a criminal on it. However, whoever dies on it first will be reborn as the king of this country, and whoever dies goes next will be the future minister of this country. We are sick of our ascetic life. It would be nice to enjoy ourselves as king and minister for a while. Now keep your word, my lord, and put us to death. Me first, remember." So, as the Guru met his disciple, he scolded him because he did not obey him and stayed back. He whispered something in his ears. The Guru tried to trap the king in his words. He asked him who was greater between a Guru and his disciple. The king replied that of course the Guru was greater. The Guru said that for this reason the king must execute him before executing his disciple. When disciple heard his Guru's words, he started shouting that he wanted to die first. When the Guru and disciple started arguing that who would die first, the king got confused. He asked the Guru that why did he want to die. He had caught the disciple because he was fat and they wanted a fat man who could be executed with that stake. The Guru refused to reply. He said that he wanted to die before his disciple died. The king felt that there was something behind it. The Guru wanted to die before his disciple and was so eager to die. There must be some reason behind it, so the Guru asked the king to promise him that he would execute him first if he told him the secret about why he wanted to be executed first. The king promised that he would execute him first. Then the Guru and the king aside and slowly told him that they had roamed around the whole world but had not seen a city and a king like him. He added that the stake which they would use to kill the disciple was the stake of justice. As it was new, it had not killed any criminal. Further, he said that the one who would die first on this stake would be reborn as the king of the kingdom, and the one who died next would be reborn as the minister of the kingdom. So by telling all this, he is trying to trap the king. The Guru added that he was tired of his life as a sannyasi, and he and his disciple wanted to live the life of a king and a minister. So he says that the king execute him first so that he is reborn as a king, and after him his disciple to be executed so that he is reborn as a minister. The king was now thrown into deep thought. He didn't want to lose the kingdom to someone else in the next round of life. He needed time, so he ordered the execution postponed to the next day and talked in secret with his minister. "It's not right for us to give over the kingdom to others in the next life. Let's go on to the stake ourselves and we'll be reborn as king and minister again." "Holy men do not tell lies," he said, and the minister agreed. So he told the executioners, "We'll send the criminals tonight. When the first man comes to you, put him to death first, then do the same to the second man. Those are my orders, don't make any mistake." That night the king and his minister went secretly to the prison, released the Guru and the disciple, disguised themselves as the two, and as arranged beforehand with royal servants, were taken to the stake and promptly executed. So after listening to the Guru, the king was in deep thought. He did not want that in the next life his kingdom to be snatched away from him by someone else. He discussed this with his minister. The king told his minister that he did not want in the next life his kingdom to be taken away. So he added that the person was a holy man and holy men did not speak lies. He says that they should die first so that they are reborn as king and minister of the kingdom. The king told his executioners that he would send the criminals at night. First they should execute the person who came first and then execute the second person. They should be very careful and not make any mistake. At night, the king and his minister went to the prison where the Guru and disciple were kept. They wore the clothes of the Guru and his disciples so that they resembled them, and the other two were released. As it was told to the servants, they came and took them along and put them into the stake for execution. And this way, with his intelligence, the Guru was able to execute the foolish king and his foolish minister. When the bodies were taken down to be thrown to crows and vultures, the people panicked. They saw before them the dead bodies of the king and the minister. The city was in confusion. All night they mourned and discussed the future of the kingdom. Some people suddenly thought of the Guru and the disciple and caught up with them as they were preparing to leave town unnoticed. "We people need a king and a minister," said someone. Others agreed. They begged the Guru and the disciple to be the king and the minister. It didn't take many arguments to persuade the disciple, but it took longer to persuade the Guru. They finally agreed to rule the kingdom of foolish king and the silly minister on the condition that they could change all the old laws. From then on, night would again be night and day would be again day, and you could get nothing for a daddu. It became like any other place. So when the dead bodies of the king and his minister were taken away to be thrown, the people trembled to see the dead bodies of the king and his minister. So everyone was trembling because the dead bodies were not of the Guru and disciple. Instead, they were of the bodies of king and his minister. Everyone in the kingdom mourned for the loss and was worried about the future of the kingdom. Some people thought of the Guru and his disciple and felt that they should go to them. As the Guru and his disciple were planning to leave the kingdom, the people stopped them. The people of the kingdom thought that they needed a king and a minister, and so they requested the Guru and his disciple to be the new king and the minister of the kingdom. The disciple agreed quickly, but it took some time to make the Guru agree upon this. So the Guru agreed to be the king of the kingdom, but on condition that from then everyone would work in the day and sleep at night. Also, the cost of the things would vary and not be the one daddu for anything, and was the system earlier. It would be like any other place where everything had different rates. So finally, the Guru converted the kingdom of fools just like the other kingdoms. And the story gives two messages. One is that one should stay away from the foolish people, else one is bonded to suffer. The second message is that in order to tackle foolish people, one should employ wisdom and not logic. The Guru does not argue or reason the innocence of his disciple, rather he flatters the king and manages to convince him that the new stake was lucky. He not only saves the life of his disciple, but also rids the kingdom of foolish king and his silly minister. In addition, he becomes the next king and his disciple the next minister. And that is the end of the story. Hope you understood. Watch it again for the better understanding.